What's up, you guys? Happy Wednesday. We are here for the weekly live show. I am Coach Courtney.
I am Coach Brandon.
And we are a couple, in case you haven't figured that out yet. So, welcome. We are two of the founders of the Shift Project. So, the third of our counterpart is Coach Jen. She's not on these lives with us, but she's a huge part of this group. So, we're very happy that you're here. We hope you're having an amazing Wednesday. If you're new to the group, we go live every single Wednesday at 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. And each week we dive into a specific topic that hopefully can, educate you around how to take yourself to the happiest, healthiest version of yourself. So today we're going to talk about decoding food labels. So it's going to be super exciting.
Super exciting.
Super exciting. So when you guys pop on, give us a hello. Tell us where you're watching from. If you are catching the replay, type in a replay. And if you have questions, we don't want to just be talking heads. So if you're on here, please say hello. Please ask questions. We want this to be interactive and fun. We will have a secret word somewhere inside of this live. So everyone that comments, we'll put it into a little hopper, and then someone will win a free 30-minute coaching call. So if you want to have a coaching call with us, ask all your questions about nutrition, mindset, emotionality, meditation, breath, any of those things, make sure you stay on and drop the secret word for drop it like it's hot. And we finally have some sunshine. We're in Colorado.
It's hot.
And we have had wind and weather and the craziest spring ever. We're finally 80 degrees yesterday, and it was beautiful. So, all right, babe. So, how do we start? So, tell us about food labels.
I think starting off one of the facts when we're going into researching a lot of this information that we're researching was one of the kind of case studies and surveys and studies that jumped out to me was literally basically 80% of consumers and shoppers, and mainly women, read food labels, right? Inherently, you've been doing this a very long time, and usually it's inherently you don't think very many people actually look at the nutrition labels, but most people, according to this, actually do. And so, but the part that was, I think even more daunting to me is of that 80%, almost 70% of those that look at food labels have no idea what that information even means.
Yeah. So if you guys are on here, if you read food labels, drop us a little hand raised or give us a hello, and let us know if you're reading food labels, okay? And then to that extent, so we're gonna talk about this, but like Brandon said, 70% of the people don't know what they're looking at, right? And so we realized this through our coaching program, through the 12-week program, that we had a lot of clients that were, we started talking about nutrition and that kind of stuff. And they're like, well, I don't really know what I'm looking at. And so that's where this sprouted from of well, if this is a problem for our coach clients, it's probably a problem for more people, which is why we sort of went down this road of how do we help you guys decode this? Well,
in addition to that is also, I think, understanding that when food products get placed on a shelf, right? First off, it's understanding that all these things, they're businesses, right? Their goal there is they obviously want to monetize the products in which they're providing, right? And that goes for the shopping markets in which the space in which they are placed upon the shelf, right? Where they place upon the shelf is also deemed of how much that how much that company is paying them to place the products there. But
always a business,
there's a business behind this. And so in addition to that is also understanding that the front of the label is oftentimes a massive just selling and a driver for trying to entice you to buy it, right? And I think, we have two girls of our own, and I know sometimes that shopping experience can be I just want to get the hell out of here as fast as humanly possible, right? Well, manufacturers and food companies count on that being your experience, right? And so they try to entice you with the most color, the most elaborate, the most slogan things that they can throw on the front of the box to try to get you into entice those things. And so
the front of the box, you guys, is marketing.
Yep.
Right? Just think about that. It is marketing. It is not education, right? It's not there to tell you about the product. It's there to market to your emotions so that you're I'm keto right now, so I'm going to buy the cereal that says keto, right? We read a box of cereal a couple weeks ago. We should have taken a picture of it, but it was keto friendly. And then you flip the box over and it's nothing but processed foods. It said keto and organic, right? Those are two very hot words. Okay. Those are marketing terms. So I'm on a keto diet. I'm going to get this keto cereal. And you turned it over and it had 20 grams of sugar. And we're Well, if you know much about what being in ketosis means, you're not having 20 grams of processed sugar. Like that's just not a thing. But the front of the box very much says like, hey, this is what you think we think you desire. This is marketing, right? This is not to help you understand what's inside the product. This is marketing to help you buy the product. So hi Sue Ellen, hi Sarah. Give us a hello when you guys jump on. Where are you guys watching from? Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I mean, with that is understanding that the back of the box. So up until 1990, like food labels weren't even like really a thing. Like they weren't regulated, they weren't required. Like manufacturers and companies can almost throw like anything they wanted to on there, or if at all.
Does that seem weird to you guys? Like I feel like my whole life there's been food labels.
It was like literally, it was the Nutrition and Education Act of 1990, and so and then that basically set the precedent all the way up until last year, 2021, is when the revamped version of the newest food label started coming into what we see nowadays. So you see a little bit bigger, bold font. You see a little bit bold certain things regarding calorie and fat and so on and so forth. But with that, you guys, is being able to understand that the front of the box isn't regulated very really at all. It's kind of like the Wild West of like they can throw out anything you want. Like I mean, you'll see things like Courtney said. You'll see certain things of what the hot thing of that year, whether it's keto, whether it's carnivore, whether it's Atkins, whether it's all these things.
Organic,
right? It's organic, right? Like when we went to Costco for like forever ago, it was organic cane sugar, right? And it's like, well, yet again, without understanding these things, and you're just, and most of the times they're just trying to play to your emotions and get you to actually emotionally buy a product, not educationally buy a product. And so it's been our goal with this, you guys, is to help you see through the BS that gets thrown out there so you can make conscious and educated decisions for yourself.
Yeah, I love it. Sue Ellen says my favorite soapbox is food marketing, right? And it is, you guys. It's a thing. Her kids have her speech memorized. I love that. So do ours. They're like, oh yeah, I can't, blah blah. But when you think about that, and we can go down a rabbit hole of like going shopping when you're hungry or tired. That's a whole different thing. But when you look at food and when you're shopping for food, if you're not aware of it, we've had clients are like, but this says it's organic and it's high in fiber and it's all of these things, and then when you actually flip it over, you're like, oh wow, like what's actually inside of it as far as, what the macros are, what the calories are, but bigger than that, like what are the ingredients, right? And that's where we really start to see, like, if we don't know what we're looking for, marketers are really good, right? And Jen works for a dog food company, and she's like, the standards on what you can put on dog food is way stricter than what you can put on people food. That's a whole nother problem in our world. But anyway, like we can't lie to our dogs, but we can lie to ourselves. Hi, Tiffany. So front of the box we now know is marketing. Anything else that we should know about the front of the box?
Well, I think it's kind of like you said. We did have a client in one of our programs go through. It was like, well, this says over here it's whole wheat. It's good sources of fiber. It's good source of all this. But then yet again, when we flipped it over and we started talking about that, you look at the ingredients list. It's high enriched flour. It's food coloring number 6. It's enriched this. It's high fructose corn syrup. It's all these kind of things.
Number 6.
Right? And so it's where we want to be able to help you guys understand is, I think yet again is because what we get taught is, well, it all comes down to, carbs, fats, and proteins and calories. But yet again, I think it's also understanding that the food label started in 1990. It went 30 years before it was revamped, right? Like every single day and every single year, food companies and new technology and additives and ingredients get chemically engineered to alter the process, right? Like one of the things that came across was even in restaurants, right? Like how much more restaurants are now disclosing the nutritional information in which their dishes are made of. But in addition, with that being said, is they may divulge that information, but how they cook the product makes a massive difference in that as well, right? Like some restaurants are known for using trans fat type of cooking oils, right? So they're using mono unsaturated fats, they're using diglycerides, they're using those kind of things, which internally interact as fat. But because they're not chemically identified as fat, they don't have to disclose that as part of the nutritional information. So even though they are saying it's a dish that only has maybe like 600 calories, in reality, it may have upward of like 900 calories. And so yet again, it's not always about what the calories, but it's more importantly, like what if you're an avid calorie counter, you might be counting something that might not even be realistic based off of the information that's being disclosed.
Yeah, and I think that's what's crazy, you guys, is it's like we want to believe that they have our best interest in mind. But when you really look at the research of like what they have to say, how they can say it, how they can get around it, how they can, it's like they don't have our best interest in mind. So I know you were doing the research on how they determine what the calorie content is, what the fat is. Can you explain to them a little bit how that process
So
works?
essentially, first off, and I think we're gonna do a whole nother masterclass on this, you guys, is understanding that why the calorie is not king and why there's at least 7 other contributing factors that determine how you ingest the calories, how they absorb in your system, and how they actually be distributed. And that's going to affect your hormones. That's going to affect your waistline. That's going to affect your health. Those other things are going to massively influence this. But when we're talking about calories, is I think up until, so I think it's important to understand that like for thousands of years, we functioned as a society and human beings without even knowing what a calorie was, right? And we did really, really well for those thousands of years, right?
We didn't have to be obsessed on calories. We were amazingly healthy.
And so up until I think it was about 1824 is it was a physicist, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it was a physicist that identified the calorie, and it was originally meant for engineering and physics. It had nothing to do with nutritional science. And then up until, I think it was 1870 something or another, there was somebody named Wilbur Atwater. And so he basically took that calorie that was for engineering and physics and translated over to nutritional science. And so a calorie is a unit of energy, okay? And we talk a lot about that on here, but it's understanding that the unit of energy and how it's measured is in a Baum calorimeter. Basically what that is the food substance is placed into this box, and it's surrounded in this machine that's surrounded by water, and they incinerate it, and it raises the temperature of the water based off of how many calories there are in that food. Okay, so with that being said, I hope you understand that you internally do not function the same as a piece of machinery does. Okay, so
way cooler than that.
So like us just using that as like our indication of like how you are going to receive that food that you're ingesting is completely almost like absurd. All right. But when we're talking about the calorie count and everything else is, most companies anymore aren't incinerating all their products and everything else. Right. But what they found is for every gram of fat, that is essentially 9 calories. For every gram of protein, that's essentially 4 calories. For every gram of carbohydrate, that's 4 calories. Okay. So this is the Atwater equation. All right. So this is the Atwater mathematical equation. And so when companies put together their ingredients, they divulge, this has this many fats, it has this many carbohydrates, it has this many proteins in it. And then they basically do a mathematical equation, all right? But if you look at, and if you actually did the math yourself on a lot of the food labels on the back side of that, you would find that they don't actually, they're estimated. They're not actually precise. Right? Like they may have a sliding scale of what actually gets identified on the food label. Because, Gordon, we talked about this. Is like, did you ever notice that the food label always ends in either a 0 or a 5?
Right.
It's not like 237 calories.
We did one of them, and it was 232, right? And I was like, I never thought about the fact that like nothing ends in a 2 or a 3 or whatever that number is.
Right, but yet again, if you trust me, Courtney lived it. We have a lot of people that lived it of like, no, I need 1,614 calories today. Yep. Well, yet again, if you're having products that aren't even giving you realistic numbers because they're estimating it or they're even using data based off of estimations and calculations, you're basing what you're intaking off of maybe good or bad information.
Right. Yeah, and as a math person, right, I need to calculate this. It's true. Go look at it, right? So I'm going to tell you guys a funny story about calories. I have 2 stories that have come to mind because I was an avid calorie counter, like not in a good way. I was obsessed. It was not good for me, right? And again, like I created this number. This was back in the 90s when there were food labels being created, apparently. That, I was like, okay, I need 1,200 calories a day because that's what Shape Magazine said I needed to lose weight. And I would lay in bed and I would calculate these calories. So now the irony of knowing that half of that was BS is really frustrating. But like there's 2 things that stick out in my mind that threw me when I was doing this, right? Because I was obsessive. It was not a good thing. I was eating a certain brand of tortillas, and I really liked these tortillas, and I also liked the fact that they had 100 calories or whatever it was. And I remember one day, like I bought the tortillas. I went back the next week. I bought the tortillas, and all of a sudden they had like 50 more calories, like half more. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that can't be right. And then I was like, have I been being lied to this whole time? I literally stopped eating the tortillas because now I believed I had 150 calories instead of 100. Well, who knows which one of those was even right? Like, at some point, somebody's like, oh, well, we're doing this wrong. We're guesstimating wrong. We went off of somebody else's numbers because that's how it actually works in the world. But it completely threw me. And I was super frustrated. And I stopped eating the tortillas. And it's so ridiculous to look back at that because it was the exact same tortilla. I'm sure that the nutrition didn't change, but my belief about the nutrition and my belief about the calories changed. So then I had to stop doing it, right? And so there's that story. There's another story, and you've probably heard this story about my buddy trying to kick me out of my truck if I said the word calorie one more time. But what I was looking at, so I'm reading the food label of a sugar-free Monster, okay? And the sugar-free Monster says there's no calories. And I'm like, woo, I'm winning, there's no calories. But then it said it had 9 carbohydrates. And I was like, And I know a little bit back then. This was a long time ago. I didn't know what I knew then. But I was like, if it has 9 grams of carbohydrates, 9 times 4, I'm not really good at math, but it's a little bit more than 0. And that's why I was so frustrated about, should I drink this Monster? Should I not drink this Monster? What should I do with this, right? And it's like, when you start to see those inconsistencies, and I can look back and see them now, you're like, okay, yet again, you guys, drop as a hashtag calorie isn't king, right? Like, you start to go, okay, well, what really should I be looking at, right? Like, there's a reason we have food labels. So we're going to get, we don't believe in that calorie counting is the only thing that makes sense in this world. Yes, they can have a function in your life. But if we know that we're not counting calories and we're like, okay, well, I want to read this label because I am trying to take the right steps to put nutritious things in my body, what else should we be looking at, Brandon, when we look at these, other than, yes, there are inconsistencies and maybe this might be a guess, what else is really important?
Well, I want to point out first it on the side of, like, if you're stressing out over 36 calories,
36.
There's more to the equation, right?
I had an eating disorder, guys. It's real. And if you're in that, you need to come work with us.
So I think on the sense of, like, yet again, kind of identifying these things, but it's also understanding, like, yet again, you might be drinking something that is sugar-free, less reduced sugar, right? Like, what do those terms actually mean, right? Like, there's a lot of different, there's a lot of different language that gets promoted of, like, less than sodium-free, so like sugar-free, like less than original product, right? Like, what do those terms actually mean? And so we always try to go through is what I say isn't important. What's interpreted is, right? And so when you can be a consumer that is coming from a conscious and knowledgeable place, that makes your experience a lot easier and a lot better, all right? Now, the part with that is kind of going off of what I'll use Courtney's example of the sugar-free Monster, right? And so it may be sugar-free, at least what it says on the label, but it's kind of that same thing what we just talked about with, trans fats and cooking oils of using other alternatives in the process of that. And so when we're talking about sugar, you guys, I mean, there's upwards, the research I came across was there's upwards of 60, I even came across upwards, there's over 200 now, different names for sugar that gets incorporated into the foods that we eat, all right? And so, yet again, if I'm just going solely off of the food label, right? Like, trust me, our big thing is I'm a big believer in good intention, but it's also understanding, like, what is the intention behind the people that are marketing this product? What are they trying to do, right? Like, they're there to try to sell these things.
And they're going to call sugar a bunch of different things.
Yes.
So you might not catch on that it's 4 different sugars.
Yes.
You're like, oh, I see sugar, but it's the 5th thing on the label, right? We'll talk about the fact of how they're ordered. But if there's 6 other things that are also all sugar, you might not even realize that, like, half of this product is literally just sugar.
Well, like juices, right? Like, a lot of the juices, they may be, say, made with whole real juice. But that means that might be a mixture of like 1% juice and there might be the rest of it water. Or it might be a mixture of multiple other juices, right? Like, what we read and what we interpret not necessarily always be the realistic component of it, right? And so while we're going through this is being able to see, okay, yet again, and the reason why we always say calories are not king is because if I'm having something that is even sugar-free or calorie-free or whatever it may be, but when I consume that, if it messes with my digestive function, Okay, if it messes with my digestive function, I know right off the bat is it's not only going to mess with the meal and the nutrients that I'm trying to take in and absorb at that time, it's probably going to have a cascading effect for the nutrients and the minerals and all the other things I'm going to have after that, upwards of like days after, right? So it's not only like when we talk about people going to McDonald's or doing the other things on there, I'm like, me personally, I'm not worried about that one meal. I'm worried about the cascading effect it's going to have internally on your system. And so when we're talking about, well, it's sugar-free. Well, what does that mean? Did you look at the ingredients on there? So if there's one thing that we want to maybe direct you towards is when you go to buy a product on there, look at the back of it and, take the information of the calories, the fats,
so
all
what
those
you're
kind
going
of
to
things.
see always is you're going to see the calories, and you see the fat, then you see the carbohydrates, you'll see fiber, and then you see protein, and sometimes it'll list some of the vitamins and minerals, and then you're going to see the ingredients, right? Yes, Tiffany, calorie is not king. Thank you.
I think with that is also nowadays they're required to also put in added sugar. All right, so you'll see total sugars, you'll see added sugars. The big one on that is total sugars is going to factor in the naturally occurring sugars, which, by the way, are different than added sugar, right? We get a lot of people that come to us, well, I was told I shouldn't eat as much fruit because all the sugar that it contains. Naturally occurring sugar is digested and absorbed and distributed differently in your body because we've had thousands of years to evolve and understand chemically how those things are interpreted and distributed internally. Added sugar, we don't understand those things, right? Like hormonally, we don't know how to interpret those things. They're meant to literally mess with our brain chemistry and go literally past our brain brain barrier and influence our hormonal balance, our taste buds, and a lot of other components that aren't necessarily ideal to optimum health. All right, so it's not only looking at, how much sugar it is, how much added sugar is into that. And then if you look at the ingredients list and you see the vast array, right? Like if you see an ingredients list and you're buying, what's something normally some buy? Bread, right? But the ingredients list is like this long, right? Like it's like in like the smallest print ever. You probably know that that's not the wheat and the flour and the other things are probably not the only things that are comprising of that, right? Like when you look at a product and it only has like 4 ingredients, it's probably going to be closest to its natural form in which you're going to find it. So every time they add in more color, more flavoring, more additives, more whatever that will go in there, just know that that's probably taking away more of the nutrient value that product can add to your life.
Yeah, so I think there's 2 things when you're looking at that. It's like, how long is the ingredient list, right? Because the longer it is, probably the worse it is. And can you say the names, right? If you don't know what the stuff is, if you're like, okay, sugar, wheat, okay, you know what that stuff is. But when it's red dye number 5 and gluca blah, 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 and you're like, I have no idea what that is. I'm just going to be honest, you guys, the likelihood that you want that inside of your body, pretty bad, right? It's pretty bad. So you have to start to look at, don't look at the big bold print. I mean, you can look at that stuff and gather some knowledge, but you really want to look at what's really more important is what is the quality that's gone into this, and what are the things that they're trying to hide, and what are they trying not to tell you. Tiffany, we're very glad to see you guys, you too. But so let's talk about the way that the ingredients have to be listed on a label. How does that work?
Oh, so essentially on this, you guys, is when you look at the ingredients, just know that from the top to the bottom, that's going to basically identify the ingredients that are used the most in the product. All right, so the first ingredient is going to essentially have the most weight within that product. All right, so if I'm, buying oatmeal and the first ingredient is oats, I know that oats is essentially going to comprise of the most of that. But if I look at another one and it's sugar and corn syrup and high fructose corn syrup or whatever that may be, I know right off the bat that was already highly processed, and it probably isn't going to have a lot of nutritional value in it.
Yep. So, okay, we're going to run out of time. Anything else you want to cover on what else they should be looking for or looking out for? I
would say the biggest thing on this, you guys, is I think manufacturers and food companies live on the fact of most of us, we emotionally buy and we try to get in and out of the store as quickly as possible, right? Like we always try to help our clients do is carve out a set of time, right? Like if you normally have your your products that you buy, right? Like if you go to the store and you buy 20 products, you're not going to spend 3.5 hours looking at every single food label that's there for that day, right? But next time you go to the store, choose 1 or 2 products that you may look at or you may buy, and look at the other products around that, right? Like what is in the stuff that you buy? What is in the things that you habitually consume, right? Because we're all creatures of habit, right? Like I would imagine for most of us, even if you're, an avid chef, you probably have your same routinely things that you go to, right? And so the first thing I would say is allow yourself to take some time, slow down a little bit, right? Like if you have kids, you might see if you can take some time and maybe not go shopping with them or occupy them in some manner.
So I'm going to say this first. Go look at the stuff that's in your pantry.
Yes.
Go look at the food you have first, because you have all the time in the world. Well, none of us have all the time in the world, but you have time when you're in your house. So do that first and then go to the store.
No, that's a good call.
So go ahead.
But then also on that, you guys, is if you can, yet again, we're all about is education is potential power, right? Information is potential power. Awareness, right? Like it's on the sense of like, okay, when I can take these things, but can we use that now for your own betterment of this, right? Like, okay, well, what is in the food, right? Like, okay, this company is trying to sell me something. You know what? This label is saying that unicorns are going to fly, the world's all problems are going to be solved, and everything else. Okay, that sounds a little bit too good to be true, which probably means it is. Okay, is that company integral, right? Okay, is the one next to it? Because oftentimes the box or the source right next to it is oftentimes going to be a better choice, potentially, than what you're having right now. I'm not saying that you may be having something that's awesome right now, but if you're looking for maybe something that might be more nourishing, oftentimes it's right next to it or above or below it.
Yeah, and you might be surprised. So we did this with our first shift group. The question was tortillas. Like, what do we do for tortillas, right? And so we have a certain tortilla we ate, and we started reading it, and I was like, oh, those ingredients aren't as great as I thought. And then we went and read all the tortillas, like every single tortilla. And it was funny because like logically the ones that are like whole grain, green based, yada, yada, yada. You're like, oh, it's a green tortilla. It must be healthy, right? And my daughters are like, I'm not eating a green tortilla. And the green ones were actually way worse than the white flour, the white flour ones right beside it, right? So it's really understanding what are those ingredients, and also knowing like how is it gonna like land in your body. That was one thing I wanted to say just really quickly is with like the sugar-free and the fat-free, and like I remember there was a meme probably 10 years ago, and it was like if it says sugar-free or fat-free, it's basically like, excuse my language, but it's a chemical shitstorm in your body, right? So even though it doesn't have calories, it's causing reactions inside of your body. So understanding, like for us, we don't do fake sugar because it just wrecks our gut, right? And I was a Diet Coke or a Diet Dr. Pepper drinker forever, and when I stopped doing that and I got all that fake sugar out of my body, it didn't affect me calorically, but it definitely affected my health, and it affected what it was doing inside of my body. So let us know, you guys, is this helping? Does this make sense? Or you're like, oh my gosh, I got to go read all my labels. I got to go do the math, right? And if you are, let us know. So the hashtag, the secret word of the day today is label. So if you want to be entered in to win that free coaching call, drop the word label, whether you're watching the live or the replay. We will pick it tomorrow once everybody's been able to watch the replay.
Well, and I'd say with that, you guys, we don't want you to become like massively overly obsessive about this, right? Because the same thing we were talking about with being overly obsessed and worried about 36 calories, right? Like there's a time and place for this, right? But it's on the side of like, what are you consuming? How much of are you consuming? Does it comprise of the majority of what you take in every single day? And if it does, then we want to definitely be aware of that. And if there are other alterations or other things that might be more nourishful and more just overall better for you.
Yeah, and we really believe, you guys, quality is a really, really big piece. So, but to that end, you guys, so we started doing, we always do, Brandon is the science guy and the research guy, so always doing this research for you guys. And what we realized is like, we can't really cover this in just a live video. So Brandon created an e-course. Well, he did most of it. I did the way you can actually get the access to it. But so he created this beautiful e-course where he's actually going to walk you through what's on the label, how to read it, how to understand it. So it goes into what's on the label, why does it matter to you, why is it important in your life, what are the lies that you're being told. It's a video course as well as a PDF. so that you can actually like listen to it, have that visual. Most of us are visual learners, so you can see it. It's got the food labels. He goes over fiber and added sugar and all of these amazing things. So if you guys want access to that, we'll drop the link for it. It's $7, right? We want it to be something that really makes sense for you guys. So we'll drop the link for that. But I would really say, allow yourself to go through that and look at it and go, this is interesting, right? We always talk about awareness and curiosity. And can you look at what you're doing without judgment and just be like, wow, I didn't realize that those tortillas I was eating are really not that great for me, even though what I thought was this was a better option, right? And so understanding, having knowledge, and then turning that into power, turning that into, can you empower yourself while you're grocery shopping? Can you empower your kids? Can you empower the people around you to really have that knowledge of like not being sold, right? I always picture when we talk about marketing, there's two things come to mind. The cereal aisle, okay? If you take your children down the cereal aisle, just watch the marketing at work, right? What's at their eye level, what's bright and shiny and says all these things, right? They're doing that to us too. It's just subconscious. But can you be able to look at that and say, okay, well, they may have the same carbohydrates, but this one has, 30 grams of sugar and this one only has 14, right? And can we understand what that actually means inside of your body? So this e-course goes through all of that stuff, which is really, really cool. So we're hoping that will be a great benefit to you guys. You'll have it for life. You'll have the PDF and the video. So any questions? Yes, Sarah, thank you for being on this whole time. Fake sugar, instant laxative, 100%. So yeah, so you guys go down your pantry, take a look at what you have. Look at the ingredients. You might be surprised. You might be shocked. Don't judge yourself, right? You might have fallen to the marketing world. I always think about when I buy wine. Sometimes I'm like, what's the coolest label, right? Like they don't have to have food labels, so they get you with the marketing. But any last words?
No, I mean, yet again, it's just that sense as if 80% of the people are looking at food labels, but 70% of those that look at it have no idea what they're looking at. That could be massively beneficial. So
yeah, awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We will announce the winner of the free coaching session tomorrow, sometime midday. But we appreciate you guys. Meet us back here, okay? Two asks for always is it if you find benefit from this group, if you find benefit from this video, thank you, Sue Ellen. You can't share it outside, but you can invite your friends to this group. You can tag them in it. Please feel free to share away. We really want to spread the anti-diet language, get people out of, get them to ditch their diet, get them out of dieting, and really help you create like food freedom and excitement and joy in your life. So we appreciate you guys being here, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you all.